First of all, I want to welcome everybody here tonight. Sorry about the delay. We had a little problem here connecting, but I'm going to call the meeting to order. Is there any conflict of interest amongst council members here tonight? Seeing none, I need the adoption of the published agenda, please. Can I have a mover? Councillor Bjorkman and Deputy Mayor Malash, all in favor? Oh, there's an add-on. Pardon me. Hold on one second.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just one small change to the agenda. Under bylaws 17.1.1, bylaw 1859, that's inadvertently on the agenda. It'll be coming on the December 16th agenda. The appeal period for the Thompson Drain isn't over at this point. So requesting that we take that off the agenda and we'll bring it back to December 16th.
So with that in hand, we're still all in favor of the, smooth. Thank you.
Item 5.1 on this evening's agenda, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held November 18th be adopted as circulated.
Have a mover, please. Councillor Bowman and Councillor Guerin. Any questions? All in favor? It's carried. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, our first public presentation this evening is the Town of Essex Accessibility Advisory Committee. We have here this evening Richard Kokove, the chair of the committee, and Lisa Wallace, the vice chair of the committee. And they're here tonight to present, and they're looking for council to adopt their multi-year accessibility plan 2019 to 2024.
Thank you, Rob. Welcome, and whenever you're ready, Richard, you can start. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think I'll take my hat off because I'm a little more aerodynamic without it, and I'll get through the presentation faster. Besides which, if memory serves me right, Deputy Mayor Malash's extended family are green tractor people, and I'm a red tractor person, so we don't want any conflict tonight. Your Worship, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Richard Kokove, and I am the current chair of the Essex Accessibility Advisory Committee. With me this evening is Lisa Wallace, past chair of the committee and current vice chair. Our objective this evening is to present to council a 5-year planning document laying out what the Accessibility Advisory Committee has identified as important to making the town of Essex a more equitable community for those among us who have to deal with disabilities on a daily basis. Accessibility Advisory Committees were established by municipalities because they were mandated under the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act by the Province of Ontario, with a view to making Ontario a barrier-free province by 2025. It's been a long haul. And while we have in many ways addressed some of the challenges faced by those in our community with disabilities, we still remain far, far away from achieving the dream of a barrier-free province. These problems didn't appear overnight, and the resolution will not occur overnight either. But to address them in an orderly, organized manner requires planning so that we don't see duplication of services or the expenditure of resources that don't move us closer to our goal. That, in a nutshell, is the purpose of the document before you this evening. Lisa and I won't cover the parts of the document that provide you with the valuable background information related to the Accessibility Advisory Committee and what the municipality has managed to accomplish to date. While it's important for us to know from whence we come, it's more important to know where we wish to go and how we hope to go about getting there. I would encourage you, however, to avail yourselves of the background information when you have the opportunity. The part of the document that we will be focusing on is Schedule B, and the information has been broken down into those things which should be implemented immediately and on an annual basis going forward, those things that we should be implementing in the next 1 to 2 years, and finally those things we should be implementing within the next 3 to 4 years. We have further grouped the initiatives into 8 broad categories: general requirements, customer service standards, employment standards, information and communications standards, transportation standards, procurement standards, design of public space and building environment standards, and finally, Accessibility Advisory Committee initiatives. I'll present a general review of the first 7 categories, which pertain to corporate objectives and internal policies and procedures, after which Lisa will review the initiatives the Accessibility Advisory Committee has identified as having a more direct impact on the municipality as a whole. So, with no further ado, let's begin. General requirements commits the Accessibility Advisory Committee, and I'll refer to them from this point on as AAC, to routinely monitor any changes that come down to us from the province related to municipal policies and procedures related to the inclusion of those with disabilities. The AAC further commits to advising Council on reports that the province mandates must be submitted on a timely basis, and to also ensure that those reports are available to the public. Customer service standards address the commitment of the municipality to meeting the customer service needs of those in the community for whom communication in the conventional sense is a challenge. The AAC will endeavor to monitor our efforts to provide those communications and make recommendations to Council on how to better serve those with special needs. Employment standards identifies the obligations that rest on the municipality regarding the recruitment and employment of those with disabilities. The AAC will monitor the performance of the municipality in the areas of employee education and accommodation, municipal compliance with statutory regulations related to recruitment, and the employment and retention of employees with special needs. The AAC will further make recommendations to Council in the event the municipality is found deficient in fulfilling those obligations. Information and communication standards outline the commitment of the municipality to providing all municipal communications, information, and forms in formats that meet the needs of those struggling with communication issues. For example, those dealing with hearing impairment or visual challenges. The AAC will monitor municipal education programs for employees on how to best serve residents with communication challenges, review and assess the effectiveness of procedures currently in place to provide special services to those requiring them, and advise Council on measures deemed necessary to improve the delivery of those services in a timely and an efficient manner. Transportation standards includes the assessment and review of transportation services and options for those faced with mobility issues, including the availability of timely and affordable transportation within the confines of the municipality and also beyond the municipality's borders. Immobility, perhaps more than any other handicap, affects a greater number of town residents than all others combined. And as our general population ages, will become an even greater challenge that the municipality will have to address. Procurement standards addresses the purchase and utilization of materials and supplies by municipal staff to provide services to the residents of the town of Essex. The AAC will endeavor to address deficiencies in our procurement policies that result in the compromising or failure of service delivery to those requiring special accommodation in the community. And finally, design of public space built environment standards involves a review and assessment of the physical environment in which goods and services are provided to the public by both the public and the private sector. The AAC will recommend to Council any changes they deem appropriate to plans for new construction or significant reconstruction that will make the availability of those goods and services by either public or private provisioners easier and more accessible to everyone in the town of Essex. Now, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Lisa Wallace, who will review some of the initiatives the AAC itself would like to see undertaken in the next 5 years to directly aid the disabled gain accessibility to goods and services in the municipality, or to raise awareness in the general community of the need to create a barrier-free town of Essex. Lisa?
Thank you, Richard. The Essex Accessibility Advisory Committee, the members are Richard, myself, Earl Brownell, Ron McDermott, Julia Welch, Geraldine Dozois, Claudette Gauthier, Councillor Representative Sherry Bondi, Staff Liaison Doug Sweet, Jeff Morrison, and our secretarial support, Janice, and I hope I say her last name, Aliso. Doug, how do you say it? Thank you. Thank you. So together with this committee, we sat down and we put together our initiatives and our 4-year plan. So one of the initiatives that we have forward on our plan is to bring forward any international or national initiatives that are taking place regarding people with disabilities. So we wanted to bring your attention to December 3rd is International Day of Persons with Disabilities. In a 2017 Canadian survey on disability, more than 6 million Canadians aged 15 or over, and that's 22% of our population, identify as having a disability, and it's expected that actual number is likely higher. The future is accessible means that we must all together look towards the future where barriers stand in people's way and work so they no longer exist. Working towards an accessible future is everyone's responsibility. Accessibility enables everyone to participate fully in society without barriers. And for more information on this International Days of Persons with Disabilities or any initiatives that Canada is doing in terms of accessibility, you can go to canada.ca/accessiblecanada. For our multi-year accessibility plan, just some highlights. You guys have the plan in front of you, all of our initiatives that we're talking about. But what we really want to focus on is training, education, bringing the information forward, creating venues for people to come and exchange information for the town and other business partners to be able to come and learn, and community stakeholders. We also will ensure that if there's any memberships, we're really looking at just gaining knowledge in these next 4 years. So what are their memberships and where is the information? Just read the stats to you. 22% of our population. So we need to get the information somewhere. So we're going to be really looking to various organizations over the next 4 years. We'll also be looking at all of the grant applications that the town currently has available to people who wish to apply, and looking at any applications to ensure that there is some language in there that it's looking at accessible. How when you're asking for money and you're asking for the town to provide this money in a grant fashion, where's the accessibility component? And so we'll be looking at that and making some recommendations that will be coming forward to council. And we'll also be ensuring that town information is available in various formats. So we've already had some discussions about the community calendar and how that can also be used in a way to share accessible events across the county and across Essex County. When we designed our plan, we looked at the survey that went out in May, and one of the things that was highlighted from that was sidewalks. So we will be looking and working with various departments to ensure that our sidewalks, because that was something that was highlighted on quite a few surveys. And then we don't want to forget, but we also want to build on our successes. Do you have that in the end? You know, some of the successes over the last few years have been the Moby Mat, the Colchester Harbor ramp, the swings that all of the playscapes that have been designed. The town has really put a lot of thought, and we very much appreciate and acknowledge the support that council has given to ensure, and all the steps that have gone forward, you know, looking at how can we make our spaces accessible currently and what next can we do. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'd like to close this evening with 3 observations, all of which were the result of my recent attendance at a conference addressing accessibility for the disabled, organized by the Rick Hansen Foundation in Toronto. The first is that the cost and effort to make our communities barrier-free shouldn't be viewed as an expenditure of time and money to meet the needs of a small minority in Ontario. As Lisa pointed out, we're talking 1 in 5 people in Ontario currently suffer from some form of disability. And if you look at the people over the age of 65, that number rises to over 40%. Making an investment in accessibility for those facing accessibility and communication challenges makes life easier for all the members of our community, challenged or not. Second, those we categorize as the quote-unquote disabled represent a vast, largely untapped reservoir of knowledge and talent that as employers, both public and private, we can ill afford to overlook. But in order to take advantage of that untapped knowledge and talent, we need to accommodate their needs to be part of the team. You can't hit the winning run if you can't get to home plate. Third, to ignore those in our community facing personal challenges, whether the challenge be a hearing impairment, an inability or difficulty in seeing the world around us, or simply being limited in terms of how to get from point A to point B, is impractical. We are an aging population. And while medical science has made significant strides in helping us live longer, they haven't made comparable strides in preserving our quality of life. A quality of life compromised by being unable to see, being unable to hear, being unable to walk. We can help make a difference for those people, make a difference for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa and Richard. It was an excellent presentation. I'm going to ask council if they have any questions. Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to our presenters and perhaps to our Director of Community Services, Doug Sweet. I'm particularly looking at the resolutions, or the recommendations to council through resolutions. I believe there's 11 there, and I think what would be helpful is that we take it back to the committee perhaps and check mark those that are done. For example, the first one, council do a standalone grant for the CIP, we've done that. But the second one, that a sidewalk be installed along Maidstone Avenue West to allow accessible pedestrian traffic to the McDonald's and the Tim Hortons and Essex Center. That is a big one. That has come up again and again and again, and I believe the ward reps in Essex know, and the ex-ward reps in Essex know that that has come up again and again. So when it says that it was passed EEAC 150309, I believe that was passed in 2015. So I couldn't get a hold of the budget that's coming because Mr. Morrison's holding them tight over there because he knows I would be flipping through it right now to see if it's in there. But I think we need to take those 11 and bring them back to council to say, hey, are these still relevant in this term? And if so, let's put them in our budget. Some of them are already taken care of. There's looks like only 2 or 3, but that was something that caught my attention. We recently had a guest speaker here at the Civic Center, David Leskovsky, I believe, and he was really good too. And he said, you know, anybody in the audience that has never had a disability or never plans to have a disability, raise your hand. And we were all like sitting there like nobody raised their hands. So, you know, thank you for coming forward. We have a really strong committee. We've done some really good work. And I've kind of just come along on the committee recently again, and all of the hard work is done. So I thank you for that. And I'm excited to keep working through our list on accessible issues.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other Councillor? Councillor Bjorkman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to be the council rep, but unfortunately it just doesn't fit with my schedule. But I wanted to be part of it because I do believe in accessibility. And to your point of, say, 20% of our population, and in different ways. But when we look at it, all of us have a family member, a friend in our friend group that has I'm going to call it a visible disability with walking or whatever. And you can't get to enjoy them outside of their home unless there's somewhere for them to go with you. And a big part of that is allowing people to go out and celebrate as groups and go out together. And you're limited with the places that you can go to without that accessible ramp and without the accessible doors, the accessible, all of those things. So in that sense, it really does affect all of us. Everybody is affected by this. So it's a very good report. I'm happy to receive it. I think you've done a lot of work there, and I hope we move forward with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other council? So I'm going to need a motion to receive and to adopt the report, and that the multi-year accessibility plan for 2019 to 24 to be placed on the town's various media platforms for public viewing and further shared with the community using suitable methods of communications. So I need a mover, Deputy Mayor Malage and Councillor Verbeek. All in favor? It's carried, and thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, 6.2 under public presentations, we have Jim Oakley together with Phil Pacinin from Canada Construction, and they're here before council this evening asking the town to consider reviewing the policy on development charges for semi-detached residences on appropriate infill lots.
Are you by yourself, Jim?
I am. I'm sorry, my builder could not make it tonight.
Okay. Whenever you're ready, you can start.
All right, thank you. So, Your Worship, members of council and administration, I'm here to request you to review and change the policy on development charges on infill lots in Ward 3. I have a lot at 152 Adelaide, which I applied for a zoning change to allow for a semi-detached home. We attended the community center along with council, planning department, CEO, and members of the public on May 28, 2019. During the meeting, questions were asked from the public about whether these units were going to be rentals, Airbnbs, or sold to new families. It was clearly stated that these units were going to be severed and sold, which would bring two families into the community. Comments were made by council that this would be very positive because it would assist local businesses, schools, and create two tax bases. Council unanimously voted in favor of this, and ultimately bylaw 1037 was amended to add bylaw 1828. On June 17th, 2019, the planning department issued a report that gave us permission to build a semi-detached structure, which in the report is defined as a dwelling divided vertically by two units by a common wall. We applied for a building permit, which required us to supply the drawings, a photo of what we were developing, and permission from IRCA. We received a call from the building department stating that our permit was ready and instructing us to bring a check for the development charge in the amount of $10,126, two permit fees in the amount of $97, and a water buy-in fee in the amount of $5,800 for a total of $25,626. When we went to pick up the permit, we gave the check, and the building department stated, and I quote, Oh, by the way, there may be a second development charge. We're not sure. We'll have to look into it. I was very surprised by that. I had the excavator booked or scheduled for the following morning, but had to put everything on hold as this could be an additional $10,126. Our plans didn't change at any time. Everyone knew we were building a semi-detached structure, which was to be severed and sold. I have one lot, and I'm building one structure. If I turn these into rentals or an Airbnb, which some members of the public expressed concerns with, I would only have to pay one development charge. But because I'm severing them down the middle of the common wall so they can be sold to two families, I'm being penalized with a second development charge. I could build this structure in Harrow and not have to pay any development charges. And oddly enough, this property that we're trying to develop on Adelaide has a mailing address of Harrow. Our future ambition is to potentially purchase additional vacant lots in Ward 3 to develop them to support the needed growth in our community. This in turn would assist schools, local businesses, and community taxes. Although I believe Ward 3 should be given the same benefits as Ward 4 with no development charges, I'm not disputing having to pay one development charge for a semi-detached structure. We all talk about creating affordable housing, but by the time you buy the lot, then add another $40,000 or $50,000 in various fees before you even start building, it makes it impossible to offer affordable housing. I'm therefore formally requesting Council to change the policy on development charges in Ward 3 for semi-detached structures. I thank you for the time and hope you'll support this request.
Thank you, Jim. Questions from council? Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you. Through your worship, I'd like to move over to Ms. Chadwick and ask if she has any comments in regard to this topic. Whether this is feasible or this is something that we're looking at already, etc.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Malash. For the topic at hand, I hear two matters. So the first matter I hear is that Mr. Oakley is requesting administration to take a look at our existing policies, our existing development charges bylaw. The other matter I hear is related to his specific development charges that were imposed on the property. We have spoken with Mr. Oakley at length, both myself, planning as well as building. We have had some conversations, and we believe that we have closed the loop on the concerns directly with the builder or with the owner. On the flip side, we do have something to consider as administration. We have infill lots throughout the municipality that are viable, that can be used towards affordable housing, attainable housing. We certainly can take a look at that policy, rather the development charges that we do impose. We also need to keep in mind that we have to define what infill development is, and we need to ensure that all of our ducks are in order before we change any bylaws. We need to ensure that we have laid out exactly what can be incentivized and towards what properties. What is infill development? So infill development to me is specifically Mr. Oakley's example. It is not a 500-unit subdivision with, half of the development is semi-detached. This particular example, our hands were tied with administration. We must impose 2 development charges for 2 lots on 1 parcel. The intent was always to sell. We do know that. The planning department can certainly take a look at our current development charges bylaw and come back, if that is council's direction, with some ideas on incentivizing developers for infill development.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
And the other question I had to you, Ms. Chadwick, was do we have any idea of other communities, how other communities are handling this particular kind of infill construction?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Losh. What I can say is that there are many municipalities that are incentivizing developers to make use of what's already out there. We do have many ideas that we can bring forward, tiny homes or attainable housing or incentivizing those infill developers. We have so many great ideas. The City of Windsor is definitely one that is taking advantage of infill development, although they may have, in comparison to our municipality, a lot more infill to develop. I don't know what is out there, and I hope that if given the opportunity that we could come back with a wholesome review of what is out there. We may only have a handful of infill lots, again, defining what infill means. But yeah, there are definitely municipalities across the province that are incentivizing, but also taking a look at their inventory. What do they have? We're not the city of Detroit's out there where we had an influx of, or an outflux of homeowners fleeing the municipality. Do we have infill development opportunities within the municipality? We'd have to take a look at that.
Excellent. Thank you for the answer.
Thank you, Larry. Anybody else? Councillor Bowman.
Just a quick question. I'm presuming the services are separate for each parcel?
We talked with the building department and Andy, I guess it is, I'm not sure, I forget, but, and they said that there was an existing water box that was there that they could disable and then tee off and put 2 new water boxes on the property line. And it was confirmed that the sewer, the line there was way adequate to, again, tee off and bring a clean out to, on the property line to each property. Okay. So.
If I may, before Councillor, just to Jim, can you explain that again? They were telling you that they would tee them together? Is that what you're saying? Or 2 separate lines going out?
No, the line, that, are we talking water line?
Yes.
Yes, so it goes to an existing water box right now.
Okay.
So they said that what they could do is disable that valve, and from there they would go straight out and then add 2 new water boxes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. When I first heard about Mr. Oakley's problem, I thought, this is very unfair. Why charge the guy twice for a single hookup? But then as somebody pointed out to me, if we do this, this could set a precedent where everybody who's building a duplex will want to pay 1 development charge. And since so many of our current projects are duplexes, this could really wallop us. You know, development charges are a no-win thing. Nobody wants to pay them. The people who buy the houses don't want to pay them. The developers want to pay them, don't want to pay them. But if they don't, that means all those people up there have to pay them, and I have to pay them, and I don't want to pay them. We have to do this. We have to make this fair somehow. I mean, housing is crucial. We have to incentivize it. We have to make sure it happens. We have to remove the red tape. But this isn't red tape. In fact, if Mr. Oakley, I have to point out, if you had gone ahead with your project at the time, the increased housing prices since would have covered the $10,000. But be that as it may, I think it depends on how we define infill. I mean, our old school sites, infill sites, that means that we'll only get half the development charges out of the current one in Harrow. It means, oh, that's right, we're getting 0 there. But depends how we define it. I'm just nervous about it. Maybe I could ask staff, is there the danger of setting a precedent here?
Laurie, if you'd like to answer that.
Thank you, Your Worship, once again, and thank you, Councillor Vanderdolen, for those comments. And certainly going back to my original statement, it's really important that we take a look at infill development. We can look at the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing and seek advice from the experts, really, and reach out to our agencies, our counterparts in other municipalities, and taking a look at what infill really is. To me, infill is infill residential development is a 50-foot or a 60-foot residential lot that has been unoccupied or vacant. Infill development in other land uses perhaps institutional or manufacturing or industrial, is opening up a different can of worms. If we're strictly looking at tonight, seeking information on what can we do with our infill residential development, then perhaps we can contain that and take a look at what we can incentivize developers, residentially speaking. I can say also that it may snowball into other things, maybe down the road. Certainly there are other unoccupied structures that could be redeveloped, such as vacant schools or unoccupied commercial buildings. But strictly for the purposes of tonight, I think residential is what I hear from Mr. Oakley as his request.
Mr. Chair, could I ask for a report on this and report back to council? Could I move that?
Hold on. We have one other councilor. We have a couple other councilors. If you want to make that motion, I want to hear the rest of the council first. Councilor Verbeek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Oakley. I was one of the councillors that was really grateful when you showed us your plan. It addresses the need, our housing crisis, and I'm just, you used the word penalized, and that was my first thought when I got wind of this. I don't think we're going to have a big influx of developers that want to come and take single dwelling lots and put duplexes on them. But if there is, great. I think that we need to, as a council, try and get on side and work with them and look at incentivizing them. So I think the time is, I think Mr. Vanderdolen wants to make a motion after we're done speaking to this about directing our administration to look into, incentives and to just developing or just waiving possibly, exactly what Mr. Oakley is asking for, and other incentive programs for just the residential lots, like you say, not old schools, not big vacant lots, just small lots and infilling right now and working with developers that are willing to address those, because we don't have a whole ton of those. So yeah, I would definitely support having administration do a report on that.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Guerin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Mr. Oakley, thanks for coming forward. I'm not sure if you're looking for a decision tonight from us, but I'd like to just refer to Ms. Chadwick. If we direct administration to a report, what's a reasonable time frame we're looking at to receive?
Through you, Mr. Worship. It's hard to say. It really is hard to say. I mean, ballparking, oh man, I want to do a great job here, because this is something that's near and dear to my heart, is attainable housing. Anywhere between 2 to 3 months with a report back to council, going through the motions of reviewing with my counterparts municipally, I'm talking within the county, seeking feedback from MMAH, as well as reaching out to my colleagues here alongside me on my right, as well as to our CAO. I would say about 2 to 3 months at best.
Okay, so further to this, so I want to just, I think it's important that Mr. Oakley hear how long it may take, just so that we all understand. I think we got to do it right, so that's probably a reasonable amount of time.
Chris, you want to add to that?
Thank you, Worship. I just want to add to that. So the report, 2 to 3 months, but if some of those recommendations from the reports start to delve into changes to development charges bylaw, there are statutory requirements as far as notifications and public process for those. So in addition to the report, depending on what the outcome is, there may be more time added to that if you guys get into those types of changes. So,
Councilor Bjorkman, don't throw anything at me. I seen you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Oakley, thank you for coming and talking to us about this, and you and I talked about this a while back. That's one of my concerns here, and I reached out to administration to ask, what is our policy? What is the procedure that's here? And it worries me a little that there was a comment made that when it was time to pay the fee, it was, well, you may need to pay another fee. Our residents and our builders and developers need to know what the cost is going in. There was no surprise about what they were doing or what it was that the project was going to entail. And that should all be upfront. There should be no guessing here that at the last minute when you go to dig the hole, well, there's going to be some more billing here. So that part right there just needs us to pull back and say, what is the policy? What is our policy today? And to make sure that we have that written down and spelled out for everybody. I do believe we need to look at these infill lots, and I don't know that there was any specific mention of affordable housing, attainable housing on this. We're talking about infill lots that people want to develop. We're not going to, what he's building is not going to be considered affordable housing on Adelaide Street. And that is not, affordable housing is a whole subject that we've been talking about and need to talk about and need to do, but this isn't necessarily what we're looking for at infill. It's, you won't build, a builder won't build more than will sell on the lot that they're looking at when they're looking at infill. So I don't think we need to look at affordable housing in that context. It's what do we want to do to fill in these areas and these low-hanging fruit places where there's already lots of residential, there's already people there, and we want to fill in those gaps. So I think it's important that we start on that and that we don't encumber ourselves too much with extra things to look at. It's time to move forward with this, make sure that we have a policy so that when people come to us and they want to do some work, it's very clear what the expectation is, what the cost is, and when they can get to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think sometimes if it's not affordable for the builder to build, then it won't happen, right? We have to make it affordable for the builder to build, even if it's not going to be affordable housing. And this council did ask for an affordable housing strategy in spring this year, but we just haven't got a chance to get it. But that's something that I'd like to see, because then we can look at different affordable housing options. Maybe because I've been burned a few times from the school board and being in the southern half, and we've lost a couple schools there, right? So I'm really motivated. I really want to see a housing strategy looking at infill residential options, because I don't want to see any more school closures in my neck of the woods. And I do believe our planning team is really strong, and they have a lot of out-of-the-box ideas, and I think that they support affordable housing and just incentivizing housing so that I believe they'll come up with something that I hope works for everybody. Because we've done some great things. We have our CIP right now, and we just had a winery uptake on a CIP, and the winery got $12,000, $13,000. So, you know, we're really good at marketing the big guys, but what about the little people, right? That just want to, you know, I want you to develop, and I want you to consider another one, and I want, if we can get two dwellings on one lot, that to me is ideal. That is green, that is infilling. I love that idea. So I wholeheartedly support the motion, I think, that my colleague's going to make.
Thank you. Any other councillor? No. Can you read your motion again, Councillor Van Endo?
Just simply I move that the administration be instructed to bring back a brief report on the cost to taxpayers of eliminating development fees on residential infill alone.
Thank you. And there was a seconder, Councillor Verbeek. Did you second that? There was a seconder. I need a seconder. I thought you were going to second. I need a seconder for that motion, please. Deputy Mayor Malash, any questions? All in favor of that motion? It's carried. Thank you, Jim, for the presentation. Yes, we need a motion to receive the presentation too. So need a motion to receive the Councillor Van Endo and Councillor Bjorkman. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Thanks, Jim.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, our third presentation, our public presentation this evening is Valerie Alexander and Dan and Verity and they're here to speak to the Town of Essex Animal Care and Control Bylaw, specifically Section 6.04. And they're here before council asking that consideration be given to reducing the tethering limit from the current 10 hours per day to 4 hours per day. And I apologize, it looks like we also have Melanie Coulter from the Windsor-Essex County Humane Society.
Whenever you're ready, Dan and Melanie.
Hi, thanks. So, I've been here a couple times before.
Can you just bring the mic down a little bit, please? Thank you.
Is this better? Okay, so I've been here a few times before. Last time I was here was to address the same tethering bylaw, and it was taken down from 12 hours to 10, but I still think this bylaw is really, it's a really progressive bylaw that Essex has, but I think there's still a little bit of room for improvement, so I have a little presentation to go along with this. So, just a few health risks that are associated with the long tethering period that Essex has set. Dogs only have sweat glands on their noses and the pads of their feet, so when they are confined to the hot temperatures outside, they often overheat and can suffer critical damage to their brain, heart, liver, and nervous system. The OSPCA states that when the temperature drops below freezing, that pets should not be left outside for extended periods of time because they can easily get frostbite and hypothermia. So Ontario's rules and regulations for outdoor pet owners, our OSPCA states that outdoor dogs must be provided adequate shelter and a constant supply of fresh water. Dogs kept outside for 10 hours a day, as the current bylaws in Essex state, they classify as outdoor dogs. Therefore, the owners who abide by these laws should be following several other rules as well. Dogs that live outside require, as a minimum, a dry and draft-free doghouse, soundly built of weatherproof materials with the door facing away from prevailing winds. It should be elevated, insulated, and with a door flap and bedding of straw and wood shavings. And the pet's water must be frequently checked to ensure that it's not frozen and in a tip-resistant plastic or ceramic bowl. So, if these hours stay the same, it means the town would have to be monitoring and enforcing all of these other rules, and owners would need to be present frequently during the allotted 10 hours to keep up with all these regulations. Just a few other organizations and statements they've made against long tethering periods. The BC SPCA stated that left for hours, days, months, and even years on a chain, dogs suffer immense psychological damage, and they can become aggressive, anxious, and neurotic through a lack of socialization. The U.S. Department of Agriculture has also stated that continuous confinement of a dog by a tether is inhumane. And the new Provincial Animal Welfare Services Act, Bill 136, defines distress as in need of proper care, water, food, or shelter, injured, sick, in pain or suffering, or abused or subject to undue physical or psychological hardship, privation, or neglect. So the limits that Essex has set could have a dog in some of these different states of distress. So I found a study that the Humane Society has published before on dogs' cognitive development. So the American Psychological Association concluded that most dogs have the same mental capacity as the average toddler, 2 to 2.5 years old. So they are able to process basic emotions like joy, excitement, fear, and anger. So dogs also require a certain amount of exercise and affection on a regular basis. When a dog is left alone for 10 hours, they are constantly experiencing these feelings of betrayal and some fear, and they are being deprived of a lot of the affection that they require. Once this fear and deprivation becomes routine, they can begin to adopt violent and aggressive tendencies. We see this trend in dogs that are abandoned and mistreated. The limits that we have set can be dangerous and perceived as abusive by some pets. They can cause permanent damage to the dog's brain and behavior, and they can possibly place owners at risk, depending on how constant the dog is tethered outside for these long periods. And a study authorized by the Center for Disease Control in 1994 found that tethered dogs were 2.8 times more likely, so almost 3 times more likely, to attack people than those untethered. So it is also placing the general public at risk when dogs are tethered, like say out in their front yard. We have a short video. Okay, so basically the video was just meant to kind of outline what would happen to like a small child if they were left outside for the 10 hours. So I don't know if you could read some of the different slides that we had, but the frostbite can set in really easily, which can lead to really costly vet bills. Water freezes really quickly in the winters that we experience, so dogs can often become really dehydrated, which can also lead to medical issues. So we actually have our child actor and the musician out there, but so I just have a few passages from the actual bylaw that I found online on the town's website. The bylaw specifically states that animals should be treated in a manner characterized by tenderness, compassion, and sympathy so as not to cause injury, suffering, or distress, including mental distress. And I just want to ask if we really believe that leaving dogs tied up on a rope or a chain for up to 10 consecutive hours, usually with limited interaction with people, isn't causing them any suffering or mental distress. The council minutes from March 20th, 2017 stated that the following is recommended: to continue to promote practices that look at animal welfare and specifically dog tethering. And a news article from a council meeting in December of 2016 stated a provision in the changed bylaw to reduce the 10 hours to 4 hours. So these are just a list of the other local counties and their tethering limits. So Windsor, Kingsville, LaSalle, Leamington, and Tecumseh have all changed their hours to 4. Amherstburg is at 10 and Lakeshore currently has no limit, and Essex is also at 10 hours. So we are in the minority of counties that has a quite a high tethering limit, and recently those have all been changed. And then I just have the definition again of humane treatment, and this is taken directly from the bylaw that this county has posted online. Do you want to say? Do you have anything to say?
Pardon me?
Do you want to say anything? Any statements? Okay. Oh, it wasn't in there. It was a different quote. It was a different quote.
Did he say that or not?
It's in my PowerPoint.
Are you done with your presentation there?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that no one else has any other statements.
And did you want to?
Sure.
Say something?
So, as some of you aware who were on council last term, I was here also bidding to try and lower it down to the 4 hours, and they moved it from 12 to 4 hours, which really didn't do anything because it wasn't enforceable at 12 hours, wasn't enforceable at 10 hours. It's not enforceable at 8 hours. It's barely enforceable at 6. It's enforceable at 4, according to our dog catcher. I'm 59 years old. In the last 3 years, I've seen an incredible movement of the way people have to treat people, particularly how men have to treat women, how men and women have to treat other cultures of different nations, languages, colors, sexual orientation. We've all had to rethink how we treat people. And right behind that, in the civil world, is animal rights. And last week, I believe, the only intelligent thing that Mr. Trump ever did was increase the fines for animal rights as far as serious financial fines and serious jail time for animal abusers. And it's also happening in Canada. I've read quite a few articles in various provinces where they've increased the fines and jail time for animal abusers. We were a bit of an embarrassment to the county last summer with the Harrow Fair, even though I know the town doesn't run it. The media outpouring of the treatment of the rolling of pigeons was a sincere embarrassment to the town, even though we don't run it. And I understand where they come from, but when social media gets aware of something like that, they just take it to the extreme. And they are waiting to see right now what the outcome is going to be of this meeting. It's time for a change. The world's changing. We have to stay in tune with the rest of the world, and let alone the rest of the counties here. We don't want to be a minority. We don't want to look bad. So that's all I have to say. Melanie?
Thank you, Dan. Melanie, do you have anything to say?
I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any questions, but I think the one point that I do want to mention is, well, of course, from the Humane Society or from a community's perspective, the motivation for this change is a concern about animals. It is a concern even if you're not a fan of animals, because as you heard, tethered animals are more likely to be aggressive. They are more likely to cause injury. Research has shown that, U.S. research has shown that a child that was bit was more often wandered near a tethered dog, and that is a risk to community safety as well. So this change is good for animals. It definitely is easier for enforcement because enforcement of the existing limit is a challenge, but it's also good for the community. So I support it and happy to answer any questions.
And thank you. Councillor Guerin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for coming forward. So, yeah, the enforcement part is, I'm having a hard time sorting out. Dan, you said that 4 hours would be something that can be enforced.
Correct.
How is 4 hours making any different than 6 hours?
Well, he basically works an 8-hour shift. He's not going to, if he gets a call from a neighbor, somebody's says the dog's going to be out here all day, if he's going to go there at 9 o'clock in the morning, he's not going to sit there until the shift is over in 8 hours. But he says he can monitor it for a 4-hour period, and there's no problem with that, he said. So.
Okay, so further than that, so the bylaw right now, is it 10 hours consecutively?
Yes.
And if we move it to 4 hours consecutively, so nothing's saying that somebody can't put a dog out for 3 hours and then put him up for another 3 hours an hour later.
Go ahead.
If I can answer that question. If I can answer, it's not consecutive, it's in a 24-hour period. So it would be a maximum in a 24-hour period. Typically, though, speaking from enforcement as well, we do enforcement in various municipalities of other tethering bylaws. It is not the first thing that we'll jump to. Certainly, I know your animal control officer also starts with education, saying this is the bylaw. And typically, when you're proceeding to trying to ticket someone, it's a situation where a dog is tethered continuously, so 24 hours a day in most cases, or at the very least, the vast majority of the time. So a case where someone has their dog outside for a couple hours and then a couple hours later in the day, those wouldn't be cases where you'd generally be looking at enforcing the tethering limit. It's typically used as a tool when the person has the animal continuously tethered.
Councillor Verby.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Melanie and Dan, thank you for coming. You are always champions for our voiceless creatures. Valerie, I was really excited when I saw your name on our agenda. I've known Valerie for years and years, and I am not even a little bit surprised at the quality and the depth of your presentation. You did a wonderful, wonderful job. And prior to being elected, I sat over there and I was terrified. I don't know, you're just courageous and you've kept your composure and confidence, and thank you for that. And thank you for speaking for our voiceless creatures. I'm all for anything. You guys are the experts. I'm not, but I'm fully going to support any advice from you guys because you are the people that know. I will say, watching your video and listening to you read the presentation, it made me think of my grandpuppy. My daughter just showed me video last week. She watches her on a phone. She has a TV and she watches her when she has to leave her alone. Now, she's not tethered. She's not outside alone, but she is home alone, and she's miserable when she's home alone. She doesn't play with her favorite Kong ball that they fill with peanut butter. She doesn't, play with any of her toys. She just keeps getting up and checking the window for her family to come home. And she's in her warm home with her bed and her food. But she does, just being alone is distressing for her. So I don't know how these poor dogs outside are dealing with that loneliness. They must be terribly distressed. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Councillor Vanendon.
First of all, I want to come to defense of the Harrow Fair over that spurious comparison of animal abuse to the rolling pigeons. The rolling pigeons are an ancient breed. This thing has been going on for hundreds of years. They're a genetic fluke. They do it on their own, naturally. It doesn't hurt them. They roll in the air, and if you roll them on the ground, it does no harm. And I think it was terrible of people trying to pretend that that was some kind of abuse when it wasn't at all. There are thousands of these breeders all over the world. You could look it up. I don't think it matters that most of the other towns have 4 hours, because most of the other towns don't have the quantity of farming that we have and outdoor activities. They don't have as many isolated homes without the protection of neighbors. You know, I wouldn't mind seeing a limit on the tethering of the miniatures or teacup animals, because you know, I think they can't handle the winter. And I wouldn't mind seeing a requirement that they have to have heated dishes. But I think if we impose this limit, basically means we're taking pet rights away from working people. If you have a normal day job of 8 hours and you have to commute, it means you can't have a dog. And it also means that farmers can't have working dogs. I think it's quite normal to have a working dog outside for 10 hours. So I'm going to vote against this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, through your worship. I think this is the third time this has come to council, and each time I've kind of stated the same thing that Councillor Vanderbilt has stated, that it's different in rural community. With I mean, I'm not gonna suggest that any farmer is gonna tie his poodle up outside as a security, but they're German Shepherds, they're Bouviers, they're larger breed dogs that are intent on being outside and love to be outside. I've got a Labradoodle myself. I have grand dogs that are Labradoodles. Even in the wintertime, it's hard to get them in the house. They love to be outside. If I were to crate those dogs instead of allowing them to be outside, cage them up in the house for 10 hours while I was gone to work, they'd go crazy. I mean, at least if they're chained up outside, they have an opportunity. And in our bylaw here in Essex, we say that we are having a responsibility to the care of animals. And when they're tied up outside, we also, like that little child, to be honest with you, I thought that was terrible that you compared a child to a dog, first of all. But the child that was in that video didn't even have a doghouse to go into. And we're saying that if we chain a dog in the town of Essex, there first of all has to be a clean and sanitary environment for them, clear of any accumulation of fecal matter, a shelter that is waterproof and that protects it from exposure to the elements, a shelter for the animal that is adequate and appropriate for its size and breed, and adequate and appropriate for care, food, water, shelter, exercise, attention, and so on. And the 10 hours gives a farmer, somebody and it's suggestive of what Councillor Vanderbilt was saying. Somebody works an 8-hour job in Windsor on the line on Chryslers or Fords or at Walkers, someplace like that. They have to have travel time to be able to go into Windsor and come back home. And you don't want to have them speeding home in order to try and get back so that they're not violating a bylaw for the town of Essex. So 10 hours was what we came up with in the previous term of council. We reduced it from 12, which I thought would be satisfactory. There are a lot of farmers out there who keep their dogs tied to a barn for security purposes. Their dogs are tied to a barn so that people do not try and enter, smash in through the doors of the barn and steal expensive equipment. There's fewer and fewer farmers that are doing this. You don't see it as often as what you did when I was a kid, for instance. Almost every farm had a dog that was tied to their barn when I was a kid. You're seeing fewer and fewer farmer families, fewer and fewer barns. So it's less than what it used to be. And I can understand how somebody who lives in an urban setting with a little poodle or, for instance, a teacup puppy, something like that, would understand that, you know, and they're picturing this puppy or little dog attached to being tethered outside. So I don't think that's the intention. I don't think you're going to see a farmer take a dog that should be inside the house and attach it to a chain and tether it for 10 hours. The reason why farmers do it in some instances is for security. And if you do have big dogs, it's more difficult to keep them in the house for 10 hours while you're gone. So I'm not a person who would tether my dog. I'm not going to buy a dog so I can tether it up outside 24 hours. But I think we should allow those persons who want a dog on a farm, want to tether it for 10 hours, that they should be allowed in order to be able to have that dog on their farm. It's a different world than, and they're in the minority right now because we have less and less farmers. Let's not make it more difficult for those farmers to be able to survive out there than what we need to. We have it hard enough as it is. I'm all for increasing fines. If we want to, if there's violators out there, let's get them. Let's hit them with big fines. I'm okay with that. But the alternative is, in my mind, not any better. Locking them in a cage all day long. I would personally myself, if I had the choice of being locked in a small cage where I have no place to go to the bathroom, I'd rather be outside with an appropriate shelter that allows me to go in and out of the shelter and be able to go to the washroom. We say right here that they have to be proper water, proper food, protected from the elements, and so on. So we're doing our best to make sure that those tethered animals are being taken care of in that sense. Not like the little boy who was just left on the sidewalk and the mom gave him a frozen bottle of water. So I think overheating and frostbite's been addressed. There were a lot of quotes by the American Agricultural Society, but no mention of, I believe personally, they're talking about animals that are tethered 24/7. But there's nowhere in those records that say that 10 hours is something that's cruel and unacceptable. So I think we're having facts mixed up to try and convince us that we want to go less than 10 hours. And I think that's it. So obviously, you can tell from what I've said, I'm not for moving this to any less than 10 hours. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Bjorkman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When this was brought to us last time, I supported the 4-hour tethering. I'll support it again today. We're not saying you can't have a dog outside. We're saying you can't have it tethered. You can have dog runs. You can have cages. You can have an area for your dog to be outside. That is all of the things that we've talked about in our bylaw, that it has to have proper protection. It has to have water that's not going to tip. It has to have insulated areas. You can have an outside dog. And people that want big dogs and a dog can't come in the house, well, you make them an area that's appropriate for them, and the runs have to be appropriate for the size of the breed. All of that's stated in the bylaw. Having a dog on a chain for 10 hours, and I agree. My uncle had a farm out on Walker Road and Gesto Side Road, and we had a dog that was chained to the pump building out there, and you gave that dog a wide berth when you went around to the barn because nobody got anywhere near that dog. And that was its job at that time. But that job doesn't have a place anymore. We have the best cameras, surveillance, sirens, anything that moves out near your barn can set off high wattage lights and a noisemaker that will make anybody run away. We're developing more and more and more of that, and I agree that it is time for us to move along. It was a very good case that was made in order to enforce the bylaw, you have to have an enforceable bylaw, and the time is everything there. We talked about it last time. This isn't to go out and chase people down. It's not to set somebody up, oh, we got a problem. We're going to go watch so-and-so near his barn, near his house. We don't have an enforcement crew big enough to just, we're going to go out now, we're going to hang out in fields and look for somebody that's keeping their dog out too long. When somebody is having problems, when somebody's complaining about a dog that's constantly barking, that's constantly crying, that's in distress, it gives our animal rights people and our I'm saying that wrong, but our enforcement people, a tool to actually use, that they can go out and watch for a full 4 hours and see that that's going on. And while they're watching it, you're going to see how this dog's being treated, how it's taken care of, how the care that's given to it. And if it's not there, it's going to be pretty evident pretty fast. So to me, this gives us an opportunity to protect dogs that need protecting. A lot of the arguments that we've had for years about why we need that dog outside, they don't shake out anymore. There's great ways to have outdoor dogs in an outdoor setting, and they can stay outside and be taken care of properly in a dog run, as opposed to walking around with a chain on their neck. So I will support this again this year.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? Councillor Bowman.
Most of the issues have already been covered, but just the one fact that I have mentioned each time it's come forward is that we're putting a regulation in to make it easier to penalize somebody that's mistreating their animals. And in the same area, you're going to pick up some people that are not mistreating their animals that will fall into this category. So I don't think putting a regulation on one side to combat something else makes good sense to me, and I won't support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bondi, did you have something?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be supporting the motion, and when the time is right, I will make a motion that we look at a 4-hour tethering bylaw if I can. And by the read of the room, I don't think that bylaw is going to pass. So after that, I'd like to have a discussion. Can we look at other options? But first of all, you know, mentality is changing, and there are some good dog owners out there, absolutely, and there are some bad dog owners out there, and there are some farm dogs out there. But Councillor Bjorkman, tonight you hit it. You did amazing. I agree with everything you said. You debunked the cameras, you know, the farm dogs. That is, we are changing the mentality. And yes, there are huskies out there that can spend 12 hours out there, absolutely. But obviously there's a problem because we have the delegation is back. The Humane Society is here. Mentality is changing. Deputy Mayor Malash, you said when you grew up there was dogs on chains all the time. I remember it. My grandma had a German Shepherd on a chain, and I was terrified of that dog. The way we are evolving as a society is changing. So I think we do need to look at it. Can we look at possibly wards 1 and 4 having a different bylaw than wards 2 and 3, right? Like, I want to have some movement tonight. This town used to be progressive in animal welfare. I was really proud of all of the work we did, and we led the way, and now we have not. We have stagnated, and I think that there's a lot of discretion in what our animal control officer has. If he goes out there and he sees that it's a husky and that it's okay, then, you know, I think there is a little bit of discretion out there. But right now we have no tools for our animal control officer if there is cases of abuse and neglect. And the one comment that Councillor Bjorkman said, that 10-hour bylaw is not enforceable. It's just not enforceable. You might as well throw it out. It might as well be 32 hours because we don't have the staff for somebody to sit out there 10 hours. Maybe 8, definitely 4. So what can we do? Kennels. I believe if we were given the opportunity to ask the executive director of the Humane Society, she would be able to talk about reasons why kennels are preferred, and farm dog securities, and all of those things. I live in an urban ward. When dogs are chained up, they bark. And guess what happens? People, who do I call? Do I call bylaw? Do I call the police? It makes for almost like a slum community. When dogs are barking in urban areas, it makes for a slum community. And this is not about the farmer. This is about the dog. The farmer goes to work, yeah, that's great, but what about the dog? Like, it is like a kid. I'm sorry. There's a lot of people out there that treat animals like children. We don't eat dogs. So obviously, I mean, some cultures do, but we don't. So obviously we do value them. So I don't know. I'd like a recorded vote as well. When the time is right. And then after the vote, I'd like to see, I don't want to just drop the issue. Maybe we do what we did last year when we did the opt-in and opt-out. We went to a public consultation period for the opt-in, opt-out. Let's throw this back to our community. Let's see. Right now, I see some people from the farming community. I see some people from Ward 2, from Ward 4. So maybe those people want to have more say. Like maybe we didn't give them enough say. If we don't have any movement, let's give the power back to the people like we did with the opt-in and opt-out and do a survey. So I'm hoping that we just don't close the file on 10 hours and walk away tonight. So Mr. Mayor, when the time is right, I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? If I may add, I do not believe on tethering a dog at all. I'm a dog owner now. My dog's a 115-pound dog. Beautiful dog. I wouldn't even dream about tethering that dog. Now, to walk the dog down the greenway or on a sidewalk, that's a different ballgame. You have to have a leash on that dog. But I've had many, many dogs. I've had hunting. I'm an avid hunter. I've had short hairs where they're an outside dog, where I had large dog run with cement floor where you could wash it, huge dog house with straw in it. But tethering a dog, there's no way I believe in that at all. So when the time comes, I'm going to support the motion that I believe that Councillor Bondi is going to make. So I'll leave it at that. Want to make that motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the Council of the Town of Essex endorse a 4-hour tethering limit for dogs. I don't know what other wording I need in there.
Seconder on her motion? Councillor Verbeek.
In a recorded vote, please.
Okay, need a recorded vote. Deputy Mayor Malash.
I'm opposed to dropping from 10 to 4.
Okay. Councillor Guerin.
Support.
Oh, sorry. So on the recorded vote, as requested through Councillor Bondi, that the Council of the Town of Essex endorse a 4-hour tethering limit. Councillor Bondi, how do you vote?
Support.
Support. Councillor Vanderdolen.
Opposed.
Councillor Bowman.
Opposed.
Mayor Snively.
Support.
Deputy Mayor Malash.
Opposed.
Councillor Guerin.
Support.
Councillor Verbeek.
Support.
And Councillor Bjorkman.
Support.
So on the recorded vote, Councillor Bondi, support. Councillor Vanderdolen, oppose. Councillor Bowman, oppose. Mayor Snively, support. Deputy Mayor Malash, oppose. Councillor Guerin, support. Councillor Verbeek, support. And Councillor Bjorkman, support. So with a recorded vote of 5 in support and 3 opposed, the motion carries.
And I think thanks a lot, folks.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, 8.1 on the agenda, reports from administration. 8.1, community services, 2019-40, read New Year's town-sponsored events. That said report be received, and that council supports the town-sponsored New Year's events, which include free public skating sessions on December 31st at both Essex Center Sports Complex and the Harrow and Colchester South Community Center, and a free public swim session at the Essex Recreation Complex on January 1st, 2020.
Have a mover, please. Councillor Bjorkman and Councillor Bowman. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you.
8.2, Community Services, 2019-42, Special Events Resource Team, November update for receipt this evening.
Mover, please. Councillor Vanderdolen and Deputy Mayor Malash. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you.
8.3, Legal and Legislative Services, 2019-30, read Town Insurance Agreement, option to extend for receipt, and that the agreement with AON be extended for an additional 5-year period.
Mover, please. Need a mover. Councillor Bjorkman and Councillor Guerin. Question, Deputy Mayor Malash.
I'm going to direct this to our Director of Administration and Finance, Mr. Morrison. So how many times is this that we've gone without an RFP on our insurance. Is this the first time, or is this second time, third time?
Through the chair, I believe it was the last time that we went, so it would have been 5 years ago. Is that the term? The insurance actually falls under the legislative services portfolio. So
through you, Mr. Mayor, 2014, we did go through the RFP process. I don't know prior to that on how many occasions we have, but 2014 was the last time.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bondi?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just say, I believe I read in there that we can get out of it. Like, just say, for example, we decide on going together with the town of Tecumseh on an insurance package, because that's what we're supposed to do. We can get out of there within the 5 years. Like, 5 years is a long time, and that was in the tender. In 2014, it said, you know, we can renew it in 5 years. I see the justification for doing it. So I just want to make sure that if we do partner with somebody, we can get out of it.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, there is an option for us to get out of the agreement if we would be committed for the year in which we exercise that notice, but then subsequently thereafter.
Any other questions? All in favor? It's carried.
.4 Planning 2019-54, Site Plan Control Agreement, Covey Investments Incorporated, Crawford Packaging. And this is together with Bylaw 1867, being a bylaw to enter into a site plan control agreement between the town of Essex and Covey Investments Incorporated. And this is the south side of South Talbot Road and west of Reed Street. That said report be received and approved, and that Bylaw 1867 accordingly received 3 readings this evening.
Mover, please. Councillor Bjorkman and Councillor Garin. All in favor? It's carried. And this, I can just say, this is great news for the town of Essex. This is going to be a great investing in the town of Essex. Good company to come here. So, and thank you, administration, for all the work you put into it. Councillor Garin? Councillor Vandenow?
Through you, Mr. Chair, how much is this investment worth? Like how much is the building worth? How many people are going to be employed there? I'd like to know.
If I can answer a couple of those questions, we really don't know how many they're going to employ, but I heard the first phase is going to be somewhere in the area of 30 to 40 people. I'm not sure, okay. But we'll get you all that information for sure.
Are they packaging tomatoes or ingots?
Packaging. Yeah, it's all packaging with fresh produce. Packaging. Yeah. Yeah.
.5 Planning 2019-59, approval of an off-site temporary advertising sign, that said report be received, and that the placing of an off-site sign at 167 Talbot Street South be approved, subject to the issuance of a sign permit, and with the additional condition that Just Drive Right driving school may, with owner's consent, use this property for the placement of one off-site commercial advertising sign in the future, subject to the issuance of a sign permit for each such subsequent occasion, all in accordance with the sign bylaw.
Mover, please. Councillor Vandenow and Deputy Mayor Malash. Any questions on this one? All in favor? Okay, it's carried.
8.6, Office of the Chief Administrative Officer, Report 2019-02, Municipal Modernization Program, Intake 1, that said report be received, and that the submission of the Town of Essex for funding up to $200,000 to the Municipal Modernization Program be supported, and that administration be directed to engage the professional services of a third-party consultant in order to undertake a municipal services delivery review in accordance with the program eligibility requirements.
Mover, please, Councillor Garin, and need a second, Councillor Bjorkman. Any questions on this? Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just, I understand why it's coming forward. I mean, it's money there, but I'm of the opinion still that we're all one taxpayer, and I believe that if 125 million is going into municipalities, I think it could be better spent. Like, and to me, it's an insult too. Municipal modernization, like, I think we do a pretty good job. Like, how much better can we get? It reeks of further amalgamation, and that's what, to me, and the people that I've talked to about it, they're like, it's making it easier for the provincial government to consolidate all of us lower tiered municipalities here into one. And I don't think that there's public support for that right now. I'm not saying there's not room for improvement. Absolutely. We can talk about regional policing, more regional waste diversion, trails, regional electricity, there's so many things, tendering together. There's so many opportunities, but I think that it should be led by us and our county council and our administration. I don't think a third party consultant is going to know our municipality as well as we do. And, they may find things that we don't see, but at the same time, our county councilors, like Amherstburg, just went through an example and came up with a policing model. The town of Leamington, their mayor came up and provided some form of regional transit. Like, there are good ideas here in this community, and our elected officials can do a lot of this work. So I do understand that we're looking for efficiencies. We're always looking for efficiencies. At the same time, I believe our residents want that connection with their town council, and I'm worried that this is going to bring across further amalgamation, so I won't support it.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm not at all afraid of where this is going to lead. I'm sorry. The province had to put this $125 million up because there are probably scores of communities in Ontario which refuse to be dragged into the future, refuse to look at ways to save taxpayers' money. They're protecting old fiefdoms and old Spanish customs, is the way the lawyers describe it. So I think this is really important. I just would like to hear from administration that no area of services and that no department is protected from potential search for savings. Is that the case? Then, yes.
Yeah, through your worship, thanks. I think the key being here is they're looking for the town of Essex to conduct a service delivery review. That's uptake one, right? So it's us doing a review of our services, of our customer service, of places where we can find efficiencies and where we can save money for our residents. The regional aspect of it is really more of I think this will be a mirror or a little bit of a crack of the window into looking into those regional opportunities. I see this first phase coming in as, like I said, what can we do better? And then potentially if there's a second uptake, then I see us maybe getting all together saying, okay, we all found where we can do better. They've kind of hinted towards maybe we can look at regional services or adding on to those things that we already do regionally. Is there buying power that we have as a region? Are there things there that we can continue to grow and prosper effectively? So they're giving us that power to decide that. But yes, I see this municipal service review looking at all services, from our customer service, administrative service, to our fire service, to our police services, and see where it takes us. You're going to be getting a letter from the mayor from Amherstburg that's going to ask you to start looking into that next step and that uptake on that, to start that discussion on that more regional approach to make us better. So the individuality will be there in that first uptake. That's us. That's us doing and seeing where we're better. And then we'll see where it leads that way.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Just a follow-up to Mr. Nepsey through the chair, and I hope this goes the other way too, because didn't we just agree a few months ago that planning, maybe we want to take some of that back from the upper level because they're kind of holding us back in a few ways. So, thank you.
Councillor Guerin.
Hey, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so the money's already there in place. I think we'd be fools not to take advantage of that. A third party's eyes on this, I think, is beneficial. And as this council, I don't think we're being held to anything. I don't think there's any strings attached with it. So when they do come back with a report, I believe we as a council will make a decision whether or not they may have a lot of the ideas that we already have in place. They may have a lot of new ones to interject. So I don't see a downside to this at all.
Go ahead, Chris. Chris got a comment?
Yeah, through your worship, thank you, Councillor Guerin. Just to clarify, the program has to be a third-party independent. That's part of the mandate of the program. So it can't be done from within. It can't be, it has to be third-party independent review.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I think we're reading a lot into this that's not here. This is not directed at amalgamation. Like if you've looked at the report and what it is they're offering, that's not what this is about. Just from the report, some of Ontario's small rural municipalities may have limited capacity to plan, modernize, and improve the way they provide services to their communities. With this funding, municipalities can improve service delivery by finding smarter, more efficient ways to spend money. Examples could include service delivery reviews, development of shared services agreements, also IT solutions, capital investments, or other projects. The key, the last line, is municipalities will decide how to best target funding to benefit their local communities. This is about our town bringing in a third party that an upper tier of government is going to pay for. I think it's irresponsible of us to not take advantage of a program that is being given to us to help us find ways to be efficient. So to me, this is a no-brainer. We get on board, we get what we can out of this, and we make sure that we find a way to better service our community. And we do it with funding that our community's already paid to the government for. This money is targeted. This is what it's for. We are the experts in our community. This person is going to come in and talk to us and talk to our staff and facilitate amongst us what we can do better and what we can do cheaper. I just think that's a great thing. I don't see any downside at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Verbeek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, after listening to everybody speak, for me, this is as clear as mud, because I'm thinking I was misunderstanding it as I was preparing for the meeting. To me, at first, it felt like, the province is offering to pay for a third party to come in and do the work that I would think our CAO and our mayor and our staff would be the best suited to do, and that's to look for, efficiencies and places where we can share services with neighboring communities, right? So to me, it just felt like they're trying to send a third party to come and oversee that to prepare us for this inevitable amalgamation that they're speaking of, right? Now I'm listening to other councillors speak, and it doesn't sound as, terrifying as to me it did when I was prepping for the meeting. So I still don't think I'm going to support it, but I'm not going to be supporting it, but I'm not as clear, and now I'm hearing that there is possibly a bit of a positive side to it. To me, it just felt so negative when I was reading into it, even from the first letter we got on this, Mr. Nepsey, when I first read your that it was coming down the pike to us. I was like, this just sounds like, why does the province want to hire a third party to come in and do what our people should know best about our community and our neighboring communities and how to share some services? Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. All in favor? Opposed? For the report. Okay. Go ahead. Read. Motion. Who made the original? Yeah. Read the motion again. Can you go through the motion again? Go ahead. Read it again.
Yeah, Councillor Guerin, as seconded by Councillor Bjorkman, that the report be received, that the submission of the town of Essex for funding up to $200,000 to the municipal modernization program be supported, and lastly, that administration be directed to engage the services of a third-party consultant in accordance with the program eligibility requirements to undertake a municipal services delivery review.
Yeah. Okay. All in favor? Opposed? It's opposed. Opposed? You want that recorded? Okay. Carry.
Item 9, any reports from our youth member this evening?
Councillor Susi?
have no reports, Mr. Mayor.
Item 10, any update from County Council?
Do you have anything, Richard? Can you think of anything? Just, yeah.
Just that we're going to be doing budget.
Yeah, we're working on the budget, and the good news is we had a lot of flack on County Road 20. I'm proud to say the bridge is done, so we don't have to go through that about the 3rd and 4th and 5th again. So the bridge is open, it's finished.
Item 11.1, correspondence to be received, that all of the correspondence listed in 11.1 be received and where indicated to further share with the community.
Have a motion, please, on these? Motion? Somebody? Mover, Councillor Bjorkman, and Deputy Mayor Malash. Any questions on any of these? Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On 11.1.4 from the town of Amherstburg, the declaration of climate change emergency. I know we don't have a declaration of climate change emergency. We have something better, but I do think that the province is keeping track of who's declaring a climate emergency. So maybe we can put it as a notice of motion for one of our future meetings to decide if we're going to declare a climate emergency. And I know it's just a formality and we have an actual adaptation plan, which is better, but I do think if we support our adaptation plan, most of us, except for the skunks at the party, most of us, then we should follow suit and support the declaration of climate change.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions on any of these? None of them? Councillor.
You're looking at 11.1, all of the correspondence. I'd like to say through the chair that the concerns of the winery and wedding reception industry about this new Essex region facility, they say they're not going to have a liquor license, but once the thing's built, then you can apply for one. The concern is how many washrooms will it have? That's what we need to know, because that's going to determine what the future usage of that structure is going to be. Also, I'd like to know how many feet from the shoreline it is, because we have all kinds of people who'd like to build closer to the shoreline, and I wonder how close this is going to be, since this is a matter of dispute within the community. And thirdly, I'd like to know what their, if we know how many washrooms they have, I'd like to know how many feet of septic system they have, because other people who've been asked, who've tried to build things, have been told they've had to have like outrageous footages of septics, like thousands of feet. So I'd like to know how much septic capacity they're putting in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Just to let you know, I had conversations. I went to work and spoke to Richard Wilma himself, and he assured me it wasn't going to be a rental where they rent it out for banquets and stuff like that. But I did speak to Lori on this a couple times already, so maybe she can add to what I'm saying. So, Lori, if you can.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Councillor Van der Dolen, for this question. It's important for us to review all of what you've indicated during the site plan approval phase. So it's very preliminary, it's conceptual right now, although you do hear quite a bit of talk about this. It's still conceptual, and we have yet to see that site plan for review of not only the essential services to the property, but also the requirements from a building code perspective, as well as the requirements as set forth in our zoning bylaw.
Any other questions? Okay, all in favor of all the correspondence? It's carried. Thank you.
Item 12, committee meeting minutes, that all of the minutes listed in agenda item 12 be received, approved, and adopted as circulated.
Mover, please. Have a mover. Councillor Bowman and Deputy Mayor Malash. Any questions? Councillor Verbeek.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. I just, I noticed that when I was going through the Heritage Committee minutes, that Rita did a very kind tribute to Megan Malage, who was a beautiful young lady who served on that committee. I've known her for a very long time, and the committee was really lucky to have her, and I was glad to read those beautiful words, and that Rita would be following up with a letter to the family. Also, I noticed that the Heritage Committee is looking at Jacob Scrippa, another young fella I've known most of his life, to do a video production, right? And it's a promo video, and he is incredibly talented, and he is just gifted in his craft, and I think they'd be lucky to have him. But I noticed that Mr. Pocock mentioned 30-second clips of this video when it's completed, whoever they have make it, and putting these clips up in the arenas of this video. I just, in September, was in Niagara Falls, and I bought in for the whole, 3-day see everything package. And in a lot of the lines, waiting to go behind the falls, they had little clips of the trolley ride. And when you're waiting in line at the trolley ride, little clips of the butterfly. I thought that was a brilliant suggestion, and I just love the work that the Heritage Committee is doing, and the thorough notes. I enjoy reading what they do at their meetings. They work hard.
Thank you, Councillor.
Can I comment on the next one, or is someone else want? Okay, just on the arts and culture, I'm really impressed with a lot of the things they've done and they've got planned to do, but I am really excited about this Essex Eats events, and I'm jumping the gun here because I hope we start repeating it, and this could be, this could be the first bomb I'm dropping, but let's get word out. It's going to be a really great event, it sounds. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? Okay, all in favor of the minutes? It's carried. Thank you. Go ahead.
15.1, the following notice of motion was first presented at the November 18th meeting and is being brought forward for consideration this evening. That an amendment be made to the procedural bylaw to prohibit Town of Essex meetings being held on November 11th, Remembrance Day, as moved by Councillor Bondi. Looking for a seconder.
Need a seconder, Councillor Guerin. Did you want to? Okay. So we got to make a motion to.
So we have a motion.
Yeah.
Councillor Bondi.
Yeah, we have a motion. So all in favor of that? Opposed? And can I see all in favor again, please? Got 4. And opposed? 2. 3? It's carried. Now, if I may speak to that, what happens in a case we have an emergency meeting or something like that? Let's say something comes up very, very important that day. Can we call a meeting that?
Yep.
That's what I'm saying.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would make sure, so we need to come back with a minor amendment to the procedural bylaw for this, and I would ensure that the amendment would accept an emergency meeting.
So we can do that right now?
I'm going to come back. I need to formally amend the procedural bylaw.
Right.
It'll return to council.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Yep,
Yeah,
I think we did.
Okay, we voted. Yeah.
Item 16, any reports and announcements from council members this evening?
Just mention that there are Santa Claus parades are coming up in both communities over the next 2 weeks, and hopefully everybody can get out and attend.
Yeah, thank you. Just quickly, Essex 73 has partnered up with Canadian Blood Services for the Hockey Gives Blood program. So starting at tomorrow's game and on the 10th, you can sign up, and they're going to be having a clinic on the 10th of December.
Thank you. Councillor Verbeek?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to talk about the hayride that Mr. Malash announced last week went off this weekend, and it was great. They had wonderful attendance and lots of fun by all the local families. And coming up on December 14th, McGregor's having its first community Christmas social, and it's from 1 to 3 at the community center, and all are welcome.
Thank you. Councillor Bjorkman?
And just to follow up with Councillor Bowman with the Santa Claus parades, The one in Essex is going to be at 6:30, but there will be a meet and greet with Santa from 5 to 6 at the United Church. So if kids want to come out with their parents there. And then if you've seen in Heritage Park, there's a couple of new polar bear benches with some arches. The BIA has put those there as a photo, what do you call that, selfie op there for people that want to get out and take a picture of something different, but it looks great over in the park there. So get out there and have a look at it. Thank you.
All right.
Item 17, bylaws for three readings. 1863 being a bylaw for the declaration of surplus lands, and this is on Shepley Avenue, registered plan 1553.
Mover, please. Mover on this bylaw. Councillor Bowman and Councillor Guerin. Any questions on this bylaw here? All in favor? It's carried.
1869 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings from the November 18th regular council meeting.
Mover, please. Councillor Bjorkman and Councillor Vandendolen. All in favor? It's carried.
And for two readings this evening, 1872 to confirm the proceedings of this December 2nd regular council meeting.
Mover, please. Councillor Bjorkman and Councillor Guerin. All in favor? It's carried. And we need a motion to adjourn, please. Mover, Councillor Vandendolen and Deputy Mayor Malash. All in favor? Thank you. And to the audience, please, thank you for coming out. We're always glad to see you.